Well, this rescue mission continues, and right now what we've seen is some forensic authorities seemingly collecting evidence at this point, taking photographs. My colleague Ndu Shandu will just show you one officer who we've been seeing for the past 10 minutes at this particular site, taking photographs and collecting what I believe would be samples essentially, and perhaps this would form part of a critical investigation going forward. So for the better part of today, we've seen more forensic investigators on scene. This remains a crime scene. It has been cordoned off with police tape, so only emergency personnel and police officers can actually be on the site itself. The actual site you'll see looks very different from what you saw on Tuesday, with much of those large concrete slabs, which were essentially the platforms, so the levels and that rooftop having caved in. But those concrete slabs over the better part of yesterday and through last night were being broken down by this massive drill. That's the orange crane you see in the background. Take a little bit of a listen. You can hear that drill breaking that concrete slab. That's the sound of it. You're also seeing this cloud of sand coming through, and that's what many of those on site have battled with as well. The wind has picked up the sand that's caused by the breaking down of this concrete, so the rubble and the fine sand floating all over the place, going in many people's eyes, I see. But personnel have been given some masks as well. Even the media has been given some masks, just advised to wear some glasses as well, because this will really be going on. For the better part of the rescue mission as the wind picks up too. We also saw some rain as well, which really does impact the stability of the structure too, as you know, and there is a concern if it does rain further, it will really impact this. But emergency personnel say that they do have plans in place for whatever weather conditions. Their main task is to break down the rubble, excavate as well. They don't want to come in with a bulldozer just yet. They say that means recovery. They say for now this is what they're doing. They've really looked through the voids. So those are the holes where they found survivors. They've looked through parts of it. So they zoned off certain areas, and where they have found, they've really searched into the foundation. Then they know that there's nobody there, then they use that part. They drive this crane over that part to then start digging on another site. And that's really what we've been seeing. So on Wednesday morning, when we spoke about the strategy meetings, this is really the implementation of the strategy meetings, is how will they go about really digging through the rubble in a safe manner. And especially now you see the police officers, because they have the clearance to go through and check. And of course, we expect more officials from the Department of Labour Employment to be on scene as well, to advise what actually administrative certificates were provided. So this is essential. On the other side of this, again, families are still waiting for answers. Some of the survivors, the patients, we understand may have been reunited with their loved ones. For example, the Safest family, Dion, the father, Dalvin, the son, have been reunited. But it's going to be a long way forward to recover from injuries, but also the personal trauma of being stuck beneath this rubble for 35 hours, hearing the sounds of this, some of the machinery being used in the early stages, hearing those sounds, hearing the shouts of personnel, but just in the dark with a limited oxygen, being dehydrated as well. As you continue looking at this, I'll just recount some of the stories that we've heard of the survivors in passing, or those that have passed, and maybe they don't want to speak on camera, but what they've told us is that in some cases, for example, there was a survivor in the early stages that was pulled out. He had been his arms had been up holding some of the rocks above him for the longest time, and when he was pulled out of the rubble, his arms flailed to his side. They were broken. And as they pulled him out, he took a few breaths, but he passed away. And he is among the 14 that have passed away. So that is really what some of those that were stuck under the rubble who've survived have been going through. One person also, as soon as he was pulled out, pleaded for water. His lips were very dry because he was dehydrated. So that is just the trauma of what those have been going through. Now, in the meantime, we do expect more officials on site, but we do expect some discussions about public memorials too, or just some public show of support at this time. There have been members of the public outside, not as much now anymore, but tomorrow, being a weekend in this relatively small town of George, we do expect more community members to come through, and we'll be speaking to them as well. I'll be with you at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, just recounting what's happening as what the Minister of Health described, Joe Phatla described, as a national calamity. And we have seen this where the death toll is at 14, but all of a sudden in Eastern Cape, another tragedy there where more have passed on. So really perhaps this gives light to a conversation about building regulations that really needs to happen going forward, considering what we are seeing in George and the Eastern Cape right now. We'll give you another update at 8 o'clock tomorrow, so please stay with us.
Geez, you've just relayed such a traumatic story as well of that man who lost his life after holding up all that rubble for all that time, hours and hours on end, and just people being dehydrated as well. And before I let you go, Karinda, just, a little earlier while we were talking, there was the horn that was blown, there was a bit of activity around you, there were trucks as well. We were hoping that it was an indication of sorts that perhaps someone or some people are being rescued. I take it, there wasn't a person that was being rescued at that given moment, but that must be a lot for the families as well, when they see that kind of activity, to get their hopes up high, the kind of anxiety that they must be going through as well as they watch on as bystanders, hoping that their loved ones will come out alive as well. Are the family members still being taken to different rooms, like you were saying, to different areas to communicate with them, to give them support even at this hour?
Yes, well, at this hour, some family members who live in the George community have went home just to take some rest, and then they come back tomorrow, where they again are placed in a community hall, where there's just a space of safety, and counsellors available as well. Also, counsellors are available for the emergency personnel on site. So that is what they've been doing. But they can hear the sound of the horn, because where they are is not too far from here, and many have become aware of what the sound means. And so when that horn goes off and there's sudden silence here, there's an understanding that, okay, there is someone that we need to look for. There's a sign that someone might be under the rubble, and those signs come in various forms. In the early stages, it was the voice, that voice that really gave some hope, because you'd see the frantic work by emergency personnel, all rushing, or as many as safe as possible, rushing and digging, clawing through that rubble to get to the survivor and then treating them on site. But now when that horn comes and there's silence, it sort of gets quite still. And most of the interaction right now is more towards the back of the site, but we see then a group of people walk there. And we get an indication of whether someone was found as media, as if we are just where a truck comes and blocks the site, then we know that indeed someone has been found. So the last time the horn went off, it seemed like the truck was going to block, or getting ready to block. But at this stage, unfortunately, it seems like they've not found what they wanted to find. And that really has been happening. There has been some conversation about the progress and speed here. And I must tell you that it is extremely challenging to dig through this rubble, because this is concrete rubble, or concrete with 5 stories of a building. And at some stage, we might perhaps get some information as to how much concrete this is in terms of the cages, the tons of concrete, really. That information is not available right now, but 5 stories high, a parking level, a basement level. So just imagine the amount of rubble that is here for personnel to dig through with a drill, and then to realize that the entire structure is starting to move and it's not stable, so to have to step back. At one point, it took 17 hours to rescue someone. This was Dalvin Schaefer. It took 17 hours to get to him because of the way he was stuck, and because they had to get to him, ensuring that as they're close enough to dig, they're not further pushing the rubble down and causing more impact on him. So it really is it's a strategy that they have to use. And unfortunately, in disaster situations, You have to work with speed, but you also have to work with intelligence and expertise to ensure you don't cause further damage. So personnel have been working speedily on the ground. So right now, from our vantage point, while we can't necessarily see what's happening on the other side, that machinery that's being used is to allow a space for personnel to then go in. At the same time, they also have to look after themselves. So this is what has been happening, and also what we've realized is really towards the early hours of the morning, later on, after the 11 p.m. when we evacuate as media, we start seeing them move perhaps much quicker as well, because they then essentially have this area. They don't have to worry about blocking scenes and trying to ensure that we don't see bodies or people being removed. They can really start doing that. So it is all about logistics at this point, and it seems like this type of rescue mission is going to continue for a while. What's interesting is that the personnel and authorities have really stuck to this being a rescue mission, saying there's always a glimmer of hope, referring to South African emergency teams who were in Turkey with the earthquake that happened there, having pulled out a 92-year-old woman from the rubble several days after that earthquake had happened, and she was still breathing and she's still alive. So they just use that as an example to say that they're just sticking on to some hope as well. But in the meantime, yes, the death toll is at 14, and at about 9 p.m., the George local municipality will give another update via their statement. They've been giving those regular updates, but the last update said that the figures remain unchanged. So we will also just tell you what's happening with regards to those figures. But really, this situation we expect will play out for some days now as they try and clear up the area. And also maybe once this has been complete, there'll be conversation about what happens to the site. Do we see the property owners handing it over? Will it become a memorial site, or will we see another building? And to what extent? All of these questions, so many questions at this stage. But one very important question is, where is the property developer? What's happening with the subpoenas? What's going to happen with regards to accountability? And those answers also expected from Western Cape officials as we continue. But we'll be here through the weekend giving you these updates, and also just perhaps speaking more to families willing to speak out. Some are tired of speaking out, understandably so. But those who are wanting to speak out will give you those voices, as they also get some much needed counseling for the agony they feel, just having to sit just meters away from the site where their loved ones could possibly still be trapped beneath mounds of concrete.
Very important questions, and also very importantly, where is the property developer? Karinda, thank you so much for your time this evening.